Miami International Airport buzzed with the usual rhythm of luxury and haste. Inside Concourse D's first-class lounge, sunlight filtered through towering windows, bathing the space in a golden glow. Plush leather chairs lined the quiet zone, and waitstaff moved silently with silver trays of mimosas, espresso shots, and warm towels. It was a curated world where money whispered instead of shouting. Marcus Bennett walked in without spectacle, a tall black man in his mid-40s, dressed modestly in a dark turtleneck, blazer, and neatly pressed slacks. His sleek black carry-on rolled soundlessly behind him. No logo screamed wealth, yet everything about him, from the calm confidence in his stride to the subtle glint of his wristwatch, radiated presence. He chose a seat in the far corner near the windows. His movements were deliberate, quiet. Marcus checked his phone, glanced at an encrypted email confirming final terms on a contract negotiation worth $220 million, and then closed it. No need to rush. His company, Bennett Aerotech, had just secured the back-end software infrastructure for one of the world's largest airlines. The flight he was about to board, Flight 407 to New York, was, in fact, the very aircraft operated on systems he had built. Across the lounge, the glass doors whooshed open with a hiss of air, and in swept Victoria Langford. She arrived like she owned the terminal, clad in a snow-white Chanel pantsuit with gold cuffs, heels clicking like a metronome of self-importance, and a teal Hermes Birkin swinging on her forearm. Victoria didn't so much walk as glide. Heads turned, not because of her beauty, but because of the blaring broadcast of wealth she wrapped herself in. Scanning the room, she spotted the chair she always chose when flying, the plush one by the espresso bar. But there was a problem. Someone was already sitting in the adjacent seat. Him. She paused, her eyes narrowing. Marcus, seemingly unaware, continued reading. Calm poised. His face was unreadable, as if the tension had not yet entered his atmosphere. Victoria pursed her lips and walked over anyway. "Excuse me," she said loudly, enough for at least 3 nearby passengers to hear. "I think there's been some confusion." Marcus looked up, brows relaxed. "Pardon," she smiled thinly. "This section is reserved for first-class passengers. You might be looking for the priority access waiting area. It's down the hall." There was no question in her voice, only the cool blade of assumption. Marcus glanced down at his boarding pass resting on his carry-on. 3A first class. He nodded slightly. "I believe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Unimpressed, Victoria clutched her Birkin tighter. "Well, some of us fly this route regularly. There's an atmosphere we try to maintain. I'm sure you understand." Then, without waiting, she plopped her handbag onto the seat next to him, his seat, and turned her back, snapping her fingers at the barista for a double espresso, oat milk, extra hot. Across the room, Tina Harper, an off-duty flight attendant still in partial uniform, watched the exchange with tightening lips. She'd seen it before. The way some passengers wore entitlement like perfume, suffocating and inescapable. She opened her mouth but hesitated. It wasn't her place. Not yet. Marcus exhaled slowly and looked at the handbag sitting on his armrest like a trespasser. Victoria returned moments later, cradling her espresso like a trophy. She didn't even glance at him. Didn't need to. She'd made her point. Marcus stood up, eyes steady. "Excuse me," he said gently. She turned with mock surprise. "Yes. You've placed your bag on my seat." She blinked. "Oh, I just assumed." Then came the smirk. The kind that didn't rise to the eyes. "Well, there are plenty of other chairs, aren't there?" Tina stood abruptly and crossed the lounge. "Ma'am," she said, polite but firm, "that seat is occupied. Could you please move your bag?" Victoria's nostrils flared. "And you are?" "Flight attendant. Atlantic skies. Off-duty, but I know my passenger rosters." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, may I offer you a fresh seat while I sort this out?" Marcus raised a hand slightly. "It's all right." He turned back to Victoria. "No need for conflict," he said smoothly. "I imagine things will sort themselves out soon enough." With that, he calmly picked up his bag and walked away, without raising his voice, without challenging her. Victoria watched him leave with smug satisfaction, then muttered, "Knew it," and retrieved her Birkin like a conqueror reclaiming territory. Tina, however, wasn't fooled. She checked her watch and whispered under her breath, "See you on board, ma'am." Boarding for Flight 407 to New York proceeded with the usual sense of controlled chaos. Business travelers in tailored suits, vacationers with oversized sunglasses, and weary parents juggling strollers and tablets. The jet bridge buzzed with low conversation and the occasional rustle of duty-free bags. As first-class passengers were called to board, Victoria Langford swept past the line with an air of practiced authority, showing her pass to the gate agent with a flick of her wrist. She strutted down the jet bridge, heels echoing against the industrial floor, sipping what remained of her oat milk espresso. She stepped onto the plane like it belonged to her. Flight attendant Tina Harper, now on duty and smiling with studied professionalism, greeted her at the door. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Langford. Victoria Berlinadith." Inside the cabin, warm lighting illuminated leather recliner seats in a 1-2-1 configuration. The scent of lemon oil and leather filled the space. Victoria made her way to seat 3B, near the window, her preferred spot on this route. She paused as she approached, brows furrowing. Marcus Bennett was already seated in 3A, the aisle seat next to hers. He looked up briefly, gave a polite nod, then returned to reviewing something on his tablet. A flight itinerary, perhaps, or something far more significant. Victoria froze. Her smile twisted into irritation. She turned abruptly to Tina, who was helping a couple a few rows back. "Excuse me," she called too loudly. "There must be a mistake." Tina approached, eyes flicking toward Marcus, then back to Victoria. "Yes, ma'am. This gentleman is in the wrong seat," Victoria declared, one manicured hand gesturing like she was pointing out a stain on the carpet. Tina remained calm. "That's seat 3A. Mr. Bennett is assigned to it." Victoria blinked. "That can't be. I requested this seat last week, and I'm flying Platinum Elite status." "Yes, ma'am," Tina said gently. "And you're in 3B, just beside him. We do apologize if it's different for what you were expecting, but the manifest is correct." Marcus, still silent, closed his tablet and looked out the window. The way he handled the moment, cool and indifferent, only deepened Victoria's frustration. "I mean," she said, voice rising, "don't you have any extra rows in business class where you could move him?" Tina blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry, move him?" "Well," Victoria scoffed, "this is first class. There are expectations." Marcus turned to her, not angry, just amused. "Don't worry, Victoria. I assure you, I meet expectations." Victoria said, "How do you know my name?" He tilted his head slightly. "It was on your bag tag in the lounge. Hermes. Teal." Tina almost smiled, but caught herself. "I just think," Victoria continued, flustered, "that paying customers deserve a certain experience. And having someone like—" Tina stepped in sharply. "Ms. Langford, I'm going to ask that you keep your voice down. Mr. Bennett is a paying customer as well." Victoria clamped her mouth shut, lips pressed into a thin line. Tina turned to Marcus. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, Mr. Bennett?" "Sparkling water. No ice, please." "Right away." As Tina moved to the galley, Victoria turned to the window, cheeks flushed with something between embarrassment and disbelief. But she wasn't done. As boarding completed, she began testing the limits. She refused to buckle her seatbelt until the third request. Her oversized bag blocked the aisle. She rang the call button 3 times in 10 minutes, demanding a different pillow, then a warmer blanket, then a lavender spray. The other first-class passengers exchanged subtle glances. The air around row 3 had turned thick with unspoken tension. At one point, as Tina passed by, Victoria muttered under her breath, "Why should I listen to a flight attendant? I practically have stock in this airline." Tina paused mid-step, but then just walked on. She had a message to deliver. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Reynolds had just received a discreet text on the onboard secure system. He read it once, then again. His brows furrowed slightly. He turned to the co-pilot. "Watch the controls for a moment." Reynolds exited the cockpit and walked down the aisle to Tina. He leaned in and whispered, "Is there an issue in 3A?" She nodded. Some verbal tension. Nothing overt yet. The captain handed her a folded note, freshly printed from the cockpit terminal. This came from corporate. You want to read it? As Tina unfolded the paper, her eyes widened. It read, Mr. Marcus Bennett is the CEO of Bennett Aerotech, our pending software supplier. Treat him with absolute discretion and support. He has final authority on contract continuation. All staff should comply with his requests. Atlantic Skies HQ. Tina looked back towards seat 3A, where Marcus now sipped his water and watched the cabin with silent awareness. She realized this wasn't just a passenger. This man could ground the airline, literally, and he might already be thinking about it. The cabin lights dimmed gently as the final passengers settled into their seats. The boarding door closed with a muffled hiss, and a familiar chime signaled the transition to departure protocols. But something was off. From seat 3, Marcus Bennett sat composed, legs crossed, eyes on the seat back ahead. While others adjusted seat belts and flipped through in-flight menus, he quietly tapped into the secure terminal on his tablet. With a few keystrokes, he logged into the Bennett Aerotech remote operations platform. A secure connection, a discreet dashboard, real-time diagnostics. He didn't need to raise his voice or alert the crew. He already had control. In the seat beside him, Victoria Langford continued fussing with her bag and complaining about the legroom, though she'd flown this route dozens of times. Honestly, she said to no one in particular, this airline's gone downhill. First the lounge fiasco, now this. Across the cabin, Tina Harper watched quietly. In her hands was the corporate memo identifying Marcus as the CEO of the company, whose software powered the very avionics and navigation systems of the plane they were sitting on. She'd worked flights for 5 years, but she had never seen power this quiet, this calm. And she had never seen someone weaponize silence the way Marcus did. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds finished the last checks on the pre-flight screen. Everything looked normal, until a sudden pop-up blinked red at the bottom corner. Temporary lock, Bennett Nav Systems, pending license review. What the hell? He murmured, calling up the control interface. The flight systems hadn't failed, but they had been frozen. Like a chess game paused mid-play. A system-wide hold had been remotely issued from the core software provider. Reynolds didn't need to guess who had done it. The name on the alert was unmistakable, Marcus Bennett. He picked up the cockpit phone and dialed crew communications. Over the speaker, the captain's voice came through, calm but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, we're currently experiencing a brief technical hold before departure. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll update you shortly. A ripple of quiet concern spread through the cabin. Business travelers glanced at their watches. A few sighed audibly. But in row 3, Victoria Langford threw up her hands. Oh, come on. I have a meeting in Manhattan. I'm going to miss my driver. I swear, this whole operation is a joke. She turned to Marcus, shaking her head. You think a premium seat would come with some actual reliability? Marcus slowly turned to face her. For the first time since boarding, he truly looked at her, studied her. His voice, low and controlled, slid out like a razor wrapped in silk. You're right. Reliability matters. So does respect. Victoria's mouth twitched, unsure whether to be offended or dismissive. I know people at this airline, she added. They'll hear about this delay. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I'm the reason for this delay. She blinked. What? My company provides the navigation software for this airline. Right now, those systems are in lockout, until I decide otherwise. Victoria's face drained of color. You're bluffing. Marcus held up his tablet, turning it just slightly. A glowing blue screen displayed live technical data and override commands. No further explanation needed. In the flight deck, Captain Reynolds received a priority call through the satellite comms line. It was from Apex Command, the direct control division of Bennett Aerotech. A woman's voice came on, calm and clipped. Captain Reynolds, this is Dr. Anna Sharma, Operations Director. You've received a soft freeze on navigation due to a personnel concern flagged by our CEO, Mr. Bennett. We are awaiting his authorization to lift the hold. Until then, your aircraft is grounded. Reynolds nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Understood. Standing by. He sighed and turned to the co-pilot. Better make the cabin comfortable. This might take a few minutes. Back in first class, Victoria sat frozen. For once, speechless. Tina came by quietly and placed a fresh glass of sparkling water on Marcus's tray. Let me know if there's anything else you need, Mr. Bennett. He nodded, then looked out the window, calm as ever. The aircraft, the route, the systems, all paused, all waiting. And yet, he was in no rush. Across the aisle, other passengers were beginning to take notice. The whispers started. Is that Marcus Bennett? The software guy. Didn't his company just sign with half the global carriers? In a matter of minutes, the atmosphere had shifted. Power was no longer assumed. It was revealed. And Victoria? She sat in silence, staring at the man she had insulted not even an hour ago. A man who now controlled her departure, her schedule, her day. Not with noise, but with quiet, calculated control. The minutes ticked by, but Marcus Bennett remained composed. Seat 3A had become the quietest and most powerful place on the plane. Passengers around him grew restless. Phones were checked, meetings were rescheduled. In the rear cabins, murmurs floated like static. But the front of the plane, first class, had turned into a silent theater. And all eyes, knowingly or not, were focused on Marcus and Victoria. The silence was broken not by the usual in-flight announcements, but by a subtle change in presence. Two airport security officers stepped aboard. Not in a rush, not with handcuffs or hostility, just quiet professionalism. They approached row 3 with soft steps and lowered voices. Ms. Langford, one said gently. Victoria turned, confused, her platinum earrings trembling slightly. Yes, we've been asked to escort you off the aircraft. A gasp slipped from the woman in seat 4C. Victoria blinked rapidly, certain she'd misheard. Excuse me, one of the officers leaned closer. This request comes directly from Airline Command in consultation with Apex Global. We've been informed of a formal complaint regarding onboard conduct. You're not under arrest, but you will not be continuing on this flight. But this is a mistake. I'm Platinum Elite. I've flown this route for 15 years. The officer remained expressionless. Please gather your belongings, ma'am. Victoria turned to Tina in desperation. Is this real? Are you letting this happen? Tina stood still, her uniform crisp, her voice calm. This flight is under Bennett Aerotech Systems. Our entire operation depends on the functionality and approval of their software. Mr. Bennett has made a formal flag regarding harassment during boarding and in-flight conduct. The airline chose to honor it. For a second, Victoria didn't move. Then her eyes landed on Marcus. You, she whispered. You set this up. He finally turned to her, not with malice, but with something far colder, detachment. I didn't set anything up, he said. You did. She looked around, suddenly aware of how many passengers were watching. The curtain between first class and business had been pushed open slightly. A young man held his phone in a half-hidden position, recording discreetly. You can't do this, she tried again, voice cracking. You think you can just... I don't think, Marcus interrupted. I know. The officers didn't touch her. They didn't need to. One stepped aside respectfully as she finally stood up, trembling fingers clutching the handle of her designer bag. Her heels clicked louder now. Not with confidence, but with resignation. She was leaving the plane she once thought she owned. As she walked down the aisle, eyes followed. Not with pity, not even amusement, just quiet awareness. People had seen the shift. They had witnessed something rare. Back in the cockpit, Captain Reynolds received another ping. This one was green. Lock cleared. Navigation systems restored. Authorization, MB407. He smiled faintly. We're clear. He picked up the PA mic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We've resolved a minor issue and will now proceed with final preparations for takeoff. The tension lifted like fog. Seatbelts clicked. Engines hummed. Marcus leaned back in seat 3A as the aircraft began a taxi. Tina returned, placing a warm towel on his tray. Anything else I can get for you, Mr. Bennett? He looked out the window, where the terminal lights glimmered, and said, No, I have everything I need. The plane ascended into the fading hues of early evening, slicing through soft clouds as the city of Miami shrank beneath them. The lights inside the cabin dimmed to a gentle golden glow, the atmosphere once tense now peaceful, almost reverent. Marcus Bennett sat in 3A, unmoved by altitude or applause. His tablet was off, his sparkling water untouched. His attention turned inward, where he replayed the last 2 hours not as triumph, but as a lesson in presence over performance. Across the aisle, other passengers began whispering. Is he really that Marcus Bennett? Bennett, Aerotech? I thought he looked familiar. I saw him at that tech conference in Seattle last year. He spoke after the Secretary of Transportation. Even without making a single boast, his identity had unfolded across the cabin like a storm front. The man some had dismissed in silence had just grounded a flight without raising his voice. In the galley, Tina Harper leaned against the wall, checking her messages. One stood out, a news alert ping from a crew member's group chat. Attached was a video recorded on someone's phone during boarding. It had already gained traction on social media. Title: Entitled Woman Harris's Executive Gets Escorted Off Plane. Caption: She threw her status around, but he owned the sky. Tina watched it once, then smiled softly. It was spreading fast. When the plane landed in New York, the mood in the cabin was changed. There was no cheering, no spectacle, just respectful quiet. People let Marcus exit first without being asked. Some offered subtle nods. One man murmured, "Well handled, sir." At the gate, a representative from the airline stood waiting. "Mr. Bennett," he said, half breathless, "on behalf of Atlantic Skies, I want to formally apologize. We had no idea." Marcus raised a hand. "You don't need to apologize to me. Apologize to your crew, and train them so next time they don't have to guess who's right." The man nodded, chastened. Marcus turned to Tina as she stepped off the plane behind him. "You handled yourself with more grace than anyone should have to," he said. She blinked, surprised. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." He extended a business card. On it, Bennett Aerotech, Senior Crew Relations Division. "Call if you ever want to do more than just fly." Tina looked down at the card, her heart pounding. He walked away calmly, blending into the crowd, his blazer fluttering slightly as the terminal doors slid open. No entouraje, no paparazzi, just a man with a name the world now recognized. But the people who watch him leave, they would never forget what he did without even standing up. 1 week later, Victoria Langford sat in her Manhattan penthouse, scrolling through her phone. The video was everywhere. Her face, frozen in mid-protest, had become a meme. Comment poured in. Entitlement has a face. Marcus Bennett is a national treasure. This is how you use quiet power. She tried to post a rebuttal, something defensive, something about how she'd been misunderstood. But the comments drowned her out. She closed the app. For once, no designer bag, no airline status, and no name drop could rescue her. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and helps us keep creating more great videos. Thank you.